Toy Spot. We're having a look at the McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs Series 3, Edward Scissorhands. Still, really, to this day, one of the very few Edward Scissorhand figures that we've actually gotten. It's one of those figures that both Mezco and NECA have yet to really approach, and therefore, this is your best bet if you ever want a Edward Scissorhands figure. Featured at the top of the packaging, there's a picture of the Edward Scissorhand figure. No, that's not Johnny Depp. That's Edward Scissorhands, the figure, featured at the top corner. Yes, okay. Spot acknowledges that the likeness probably is not all there, but still nonetheless. And also down below, the display stand, which will be with the figure, also includes a movie poster replica. Flipping around the back side of the package, there's a picture of Edward Scissorhands. The other figures that you can get in Series 3, there's Edward Scissorhands, Army of Darkness, Ash. There's Escape from L.A., Snake Plissken. The Fly. There's Shaft, The Thing, King Kong, and Halloween. Now, it says down below Halloween and Nightmare on Elm Street, though really technically they're not really part of the 6-inch line. They were part of the sensor-activated line, which Spot had at one point when he was really getting into Movie Maniacs figures. I had both of these and sold them. Kind of wish that I had still had them and I could have done the review, but that's what happens. You sell things and then later on you look back and say, oh, why did I do that? Oh, why did I do that? I should have just held on to it. Oh, what was I thinking? Anyways, Spot's going to take a break and get this open up. When we come back, we're going to get a better look at the McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs Series 3, Edward Scissorhands. Stay tuned, guys. There's more heading your way. Don't go anywhere. As Spot alluded to earlier, yes, he does come with his own Movie Maniacs display stand, featuring a poster of Edward Scissorhands. Johnny Depp. Before he got weird and was doing all those pirate movies and Lone Ranger. I don't know why he was doing Lone Ranger, but there's, yeah, a nice looking display stand. Now, we've seen this display stand before with other Movie Maniac pieces. As future series progressed, the stands got smaller and smaller and smaller until they were, of course, about there. I know I've kind of already said this, covered this territory before. But yeah, it's still a nice looking stand. Still holds up well and some decent looking paint. On the back side, just some glue. Just some dots of glue. This would have been... It's a shame the one thing about the display stands is there is no backing to it. So pushing it against anything, or if you package it badly, the poster can either get pushed right through or it gets all crinkly and crumply and other words that Spot's making up, wrinkly. Yeah, I wish there was some backing or something to it. But anyways. So you get a display stand. You put that there, or at least I put that there for not really necessarily product placement, but just to show you, it's, if you're just joining us, what are we reviewing? Edward Scissorhands right there. Looking closer at Edward Scissorhands, though really Spot does knock it for the fact that, yes, this is an older looking piece, you know, it still holds up pretty good indeed. It benefits from the fact that, yes, his hair kind of covers most of his face, that if you were to move his hair, does it look like Johnny Depp? As Edward Scissorhands, I'm going to say actually a yes. I'm going to say it holds up still pretty good to Johnny Depp. Now, there's a big splotch of gray or something going on his lip, which possibly might have been there in the movie, but he's got this really pale complexion. Some cuts on his face. I'm sorry, I'm really sorry, but for Edward Scissorhands, as soon as I hear Edward Scissorhands, you know the first thing I think of? No, not Tim Burton. No, not Johnny Depp. No, not even Winona Ryder. The first thing I think about is Seinfeld. The barber, who loved Edward Scissorhands and dreamt if only he could have scissors for hands. That's my dream, Jerry. Scissors for hands. Speaking of scissors, though, namesake-wise, he certainly lives up to the name Edward Scissorhands. Quite nicely detailed. For a basic, more simplified version of a figure than what we would get now, the scissors really look pretty good. And pleasantly surprised, this is the part that pleasantly surprised me, each scissor is independently articulated. And again, we're talking about days, oh, those days. You know those days, hot summer days with lemonade? You know those days when a figure just had a swivel? You just moved the arm, and sometimes they were pre-posed, kind of like what we got right now, but they didn't have a whole lot more going on. Well, at least these have moving individual scissor blades. Really nice detail. And yes, it also does carry over to this hand. Also has independent scissor blades as well. Scissors for hands, Jerry. That's all I dreamt. Dream come true. Scissors for hands. Anyways, the rest of his body, though, in this quasi kind of goth emo look that they gave him, looks really cool. I say emo, I mean really emo didn't even exist back when Edward Scissorhands was around. He was doing really emo before emo was emo. But he's got these straps, some nice gold rivets and buckles here in the torso. Also in his belt. Waist, legs, yes, covered all that. And then he's got this, I don't know what this is. I guess it's just the idea that he's made out of components. I mean, I haven't seen the movie for a bit, but I don't recall whether he actually had a big staple in the side of his leg. I know it's not quite really a staple. And there's like a sewing needle on the other side there as well. They can't be removed. I mean, you could force it out, but you're never going to be able to get it back in. That's a rule of thumb, really. It follows with everything. Like cereal boxes, good luck trying to get a prize out. You'll never get that back in. Mom's going to know that you've been pulling out the bag and rummaging through to get your prize out. That's another story, though. Some nice flaps, little individual fabric pieces hanging down from his boot. Again, really for what it is, it's a good-looking piece. I would almost really say that if NECA was to produce something like this for now, and I kind of use NECA as the benchmark for what we get with super articulated, super detailed figures, NECA really is a good benchmark to set things by. I would say, though, if NECA produced something like this, I don't think it would be that far off than what we're getting here, other than we would have additional articulation in the shoulders, articulation, thank you, in the legs as well. Whereas the original McFarlane toys, yeah, okay, so it doesn't have as much articulation, but the rest of it really still holds up to this day. Speaking of articulation, which Spot seemed to have such a tough time getting out of his mouth, speaking of articulation, Edward Scissorhands does have a rotation in the head. It's on an angle, and you'll also find, too, at least for myself, when you rotate the head, it feels like it's not quite on there. In fact, you can kind of see where it's slightly unpegged from itself. Just maybe put a little bit of pressure on there. It doesn't really even sit completely in there. As for shoulders, he has no articulation really from here to here. However, when you get to the, well, really to about there, when you get to the bicep area, though, he does swivel, and he also swivels in the glove. We've already established he has individual, Spot's sounding like a broken record, individual bladed fingers. On the other side, the flip end of it, his articulation slightly different in the shoulder area, which is a common trend when it comes to movie Maniac pieces. Sometimes you'll get one arm where the articulation starts here, maybe the other arm, the articulation is up here. It's really just depending on what they had planned. I mean, that kind of looks cool too. You can have Edward Scissorhands. I think he did this in the classroom. He just kind of flicked his Edward Scissored hands towards the classmates. Yeah, I mean, that's a good look. I kind of like that bent elbow, which is probably maybe what they had in mind. When you get to the waist, swivel in the waist. Legs swivel via the V-shaped swivel. So the legs, when you start moving them forward, I mean, they kind of move outward. Looks like he's about to sit for a picnic. And then there's a swivel in the boot there. He has peg points, really, surprisingly enough, under his feet, though he doesn't come with a display stand. I kind of feel like he would have benefited from a display stand just because of the way he is. He's a very skinny figure, and he's one that you kind of have to really kind of play around with to get him to stand properly. But you know what? Still pretty impressed with this piece indeed. Will we ever get An Edward Scissorhands figure from another toy company? I don't know. I don't have a magic ball in front of me, sadly, but I can tell you, though, if we never did, McFarlane still holds up still to this day. It could be a little bit better, yes, but it's still pretty good. Edward Scissorhands, I'm going to give him a 7.5. 7.5 to Edward here. Spoon hands. Now that would be kind of interesting as well. I could think of all the bowls of soup I could eat with one hand. 5 soups I can really think of, but I'm getting way off topic. Today's Toy Spot, we're having a look at the McFarlane Toys Movie Maniacs Series 3, Edward Scissorhands. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's going to have more Toy Spots heading your way. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Spoons for hands. Oh, the dream.